Welcome to our podcast. We pick major historical events and look at them from each side's perspective. Our goal is to make you well-informed and try to minimize the winner's version of history that we so often find in textbooks. Today, we're diving into the 1979 Iranian Revolution. This event dramatically reshaped Iran and continues to influence the Middle East and global politics today. It's a story of religious fervor, political maneuvering, and a clash of cultures. The revolution replaced a Western-backed monarchy with an Islamic Republic, changing everything. To understand this complex event, we'll look at it from three key perspectives. First, we'll hear from the Iranian clergy, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, A-yah-TOLL-ah Ko-MAY-nee. Then, we'll explore the diverse views of the Iranian population. Finally, we'll examine the perspective of the Shah's regime. After hearing each side, we will conclude with the common ground, the facts that everyone, regardless of bias, agrees upon. Let's begin with the Iranian clergy's perspective. For them, the revolution wasn't just a political upheaval, it was a divine mission. The Shah's regime, a puppet of Western powers, had long oppressed our people, they might say. It desecrated the sanctity of Islam in our land. For decades, the Shah, supported by America and other Western nations, had pushed Iran towards a secular, westernized society. This meant sidelining Islamic traditions and values. He promoted Western dress, entertainment, and laws that were often at odds with Islamic teachings. The people saw this as an attack on their very identity, on their faith, and their way of life. The cries for justice, for a return to true Islamic values, began to rise from the mosques and streets, a righteous anger against corruption and tyranny. We, the clergy, recognized the burning desire in the hearts of the faithful. We knew it was our sacred duty to guide them towards liberation. We saw the widespread discontent, the feeling that the Shah was out of touch with the needs and desires of the Iranian people. He was seen as enriching himself and his cronies while many Iranians struggled. The students and intellectuals, initially misled by Western ideologies, began to see the light of Islam as the true path to independence and self-determination. These were people who had, at first, been attracted to Western ideas of democracy and progress. But they soon realized that the Shah's version of modernization was benefiting only a small elite. They saw the deep inequality in Iranian society and the Shah's close ties to foreign powers. The demonstrations and protests, though met with violence by the Shah's forces, only strengthened our resolve. They revealed the regime's weakness. Each act of violence, each arrest, only fueled the fire. The Shah's secret police, known as SAVAK, SAHVAK, were notorious for their brutality. People were arrested, tortured, and even killed for speaking out against the regime. Black Friday, though a tragic event where innocent lives were lost, exposed the brutality of the Shah. It solidified the people's unwavering commitment to our cause. Black Friday refers to a specific day, September 8, 1978. On this day, government troops opened fire on protesters in Tehran's Jail Square, Jah Square. Hundreds of people were killed or injured. This event was a turning point, shattering any remaining faith in the Shah's willingness to listen to the people. The economic mismanagement and social injustice of the Pahlavi dynasty became increasingly clear to all, proving their incompetence and moral bankruptcy. The Shah's economic policies, while creating some wealth, had also led to high inflation and widespread poverty. Many felt that the Shah and his family were living lavishly, while ordinary Iranians struggled to make ends meet. The West's unwavering support for the Shah, despite his blatant disregard for human rights, further fueled our determination to break free from their influence. America's backing of the Shah was seen as a sign of Western imperialism, a desire to control Iran's resources and dictate its policies. This resentment of foreign interference was a powerful motivator for many Iranians. The return of Imam Khomeini from exile was a pivotal moment, a divine intervention that ignited the revolution with renewed fervor. After years in exile, Khomeini's return was a symbol of hope and defiance. He had become the voice of the opposition, and his presence in Iran galvanized the people. Millions poured into the streets. answering the Imam's call for the establishment of an Islamic Republic, a government based on the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet. The streets of Iran's cities were filled with people chanting slogans, demanding the Shah's removal and the establishment of an Islamic state. The military, weakened by internal divisions and the growing awareness of the Shah's illegitimacy, began to crumble under the weight of the people's will. Soldiers, many of whom were devout Muslims, began to question their loyalty to the Shah. Some even defected to the side of the revolution. The Shah's departure was a victory for Islam. It was a clear sign that the forces of good can overcome even the most powerful oppressors. The Shah's leaving the country was a moment of jubilation for the revolutionaries. It was seen as the end of an era of oppression and the beginning of a new chapter in Iranian history. The establishment of the Islamic Republic was not merely a change of government. It was a fundamental transformation of our society based on Islamic principles. The revolution aimed to create a society governed by Islamic law, where morality and piety were valued above all else. The new constitution, grounded in Islamic law, provided a framework for a just and equitable society, protecting the rights of all citizens within the bounds of Islamic morality. While the Constitution guaranteed certain rights, these were always interpreted within the framework of Islamic law. This led to restrictions on personal freedoms and the suppression of dissent. The nationalization of key industries was a necessary step to ensure that the wealth of our nation benefited all the people, not just a privileged few. The oil industry, in particular, was brought under state control, with the aim of using its revenues to improve the lives of ordinary Iranians. The rejection of Western cultural imperialism was crucial to preserving our Islamic identity and protecting our youth from the corrupting influences of foreign ideologies. The new regime actively promoted Islamic culture and values. They cracked down on Western music, movies, and fashion. The Iran-Iraq War, though a difficult trial, demonstrated the resilience and unwavering faith of our people in the face of aggression. Saddam Hussein's invasion of Iran was seen as an attempt to crush the revolution and restore the old order. The war became a test of the revolution's strength and the Iranian people's commitment to their new Islamic state. The support of the international community for Saddam Hussein only strengthened our resolve to defend our revolution and our Islamic values. Many countries, including the United States, supported Iraq during the war, fearing the spread of Islamic revolution. This further isolated Iran and fueled its anti-Western sentiment. The establishment of Islamic institutions and organizations, such as the Revolutionary Guard, ensured the protection of our revolution and the enforcement of Islamic law. The Revolutionary Guard became a powerful force in Iranian society, responsible for maintaining internal security and defending the revolution against its enemies. The Islamic Revolution continues to inspire oppressed people around the world to rise up against injustice and seek liberation through the power of Islam. That's the clergy's perspective. Now, let's turn to the Iranian population. It's important to remember that the Iranian population was far from monolithic. There were many different groups with different goals. The stench of inequality grew unbearable, one Iranian might say. The Shah's lavish lifestyle mocked our poverty and stifled our aspirations. It was clear that the old ways, the traditions that defined us, were being eroded by Western influence under the Pahlavi regime. We saw the corruption and the extravagance of the elite, while many of us struggled to feed our families. The Shah's modernization policies often seemed to disregard our cultural heritage and religious beliefs. Our mosques became rallying points. The Imam's sermons echoed our shared frustrations and ignited the flames of dissent. The mosques provided a space for people to voice their grievances and organize protests. The Imams played a crucial role in mobilizing the population against the Shah. The cries for justice swelled with each passing day, fueled by the Shah's secret police, SAVAK, and their brutal repression of our voices. SAVAK methods were harsh, and their presence created a climate of fear. This repression only strengthened our determination to overthrow the Shah. We yearned for a return to our Islamic values, a society where morality and piety reigned supreme, not the decadence flaunted by the elite. Many Iranians felt that the Shah's westernization policies had led to a decline in moral values and an increase in social problems. It was obvious the promises of economic prosperity never materialized for most of us. The wealth remained concentrated in the hands of a select few. Despite the oil boom, the benefits of economic growth were not evenly distributed. Many Iranians felt left behind. The courage of students, intellectuals, and ordinary citizens demonstrated our unwavering commitment to overthrowing the corrupt monarchy. These were people from all walks of life who were willing to risk their lives for a better future. The exile of Ayatollah Khomeini became a symbol of our oppression, and his words, smuggled back to us, offered hope and guidance. Khomeini's messages resonated with many Iranians. They offered a vision of a just and equitable society based on Islamic principles. The bloodshed at Jail Square, Black Friday, solidified our resolve. The regime's brutality only strengthened our determination. Black Friday was a turning point for many Iranians. It convinced them that the Shah was unwilling to listen to their demands and that revolution was the only option. The strikes and protests paralyzed the nation, showcasing our collective power and bringing the Shah's government to its knees. The strikes and protests were a powerful display of people power. They crippled the Iranian economy and put immense pressure on the Shah's regime. We rejoiced at the Shah's flight, a victory hard-earned through sacrifice and unwavering faith. The Shah's departure was a moment of immense celebration for many Iranians. They felt that they had finally achieved their goal of overthrowing the monarchy. The return of Ayatollah Khomeini marked a new chapter, a chance to build an Islamic Republic that reflected our ideals. Khomeini's return was greeted with enormous enthusiasm. Many Iranians believed that he was the leader who could finally deliver them from oppression and create a better future. Our initial hope for unity soon faded as different factions emerged, each with its own vision for the future of Iran. After the revolution, different groups with different ideologies began to compete for power. This led to infighting and political instability. The establishment of the Islamic Republic was a step forward, but the subsequent purges and suppression of dissenting voices caused deep divisions amongst us. The new regime cracked down on opposition groups, including secularists, socialists, and even some religious figures who disagreed with Khomeini's vision. We endured the Iran-Iraq War, a devastating conflict that tested our resilience and further entrenched the power of the Revolutionary Guard. The war was a traumatic experience for the Iranian people. It strengthened the power of the Revolutionary Guard and led to a more authoritarian form of government. The hostage crisis at the U.S. Embassy, while initially seen as a revolutionary act, created international isolation and economic hardship. The hostage crisis damaged Iran's international reputation and led to economic sanctions. The promise of economic justice remained unfulfilled as corruption and mismanagement plagued the new regime. Corruption and mismanagement continued to be problems under the Islamic Republic. This led to widespread discontent and a feeling that the revolution had not delivered on its promises. Our dreams for a truly democratic Islamic society were tempered by the realities of authoritarian rule. The Islamic Republic, while claiming to be based on Islamic principles, became an authoritarian regime that suppressed dissent and restricted personal freedoms. We yearn for a way to reconcile our Islamic values with the principles of freedom, justice, and equality. Many Iranians continue to struggle with the question of how to reconcile their faith with their desire for a more democratic and open society. The future remains uncertain, but we are determined to shape it in a way that honors our history, respects our traditions, and fulfills our aspirations for a better Iran. Finally, let's consider the perspective of the Shah's regime. The initial unrest was fueled by foreign agitators and religious fanatics. They were exploiting legitimate, but ultimately manageable, economic grievances. We saw the protests as being driven by a small minority of extremists who were using religion to manipulate the population. The international media, particularly Western outlets, were actively undermining our efforts to maintain stability. They portrayed us as oppressors rather than protectors. We felt that the Western media was biased against us, and that they were exaggerating the extent of the unrest and the brutality of our response. The so-called students occupying universities were nothing more than pawns of radical mullahs, spreading lies and inciting violence. We believed that the students were being used by the clergy to destabilize the country. Our attempts at modernization and secularization, designed to elevate Iranian society, were deliberately misinterpreted as attacks on Islam by backward elements. We felt that our modernization policies were essential for Iran's progress, and that they were being unfairly criticized by those who were resistant to change. We were betrayed by supposed allies who prioritized short-term political gains over long-term strategic partnerships. We felt abandoned by our allies in the West, who were unwilling to stand by us in the face of the revolution. The rise of Khomeini from his exile was a direct result of Western powers' failure to properly monitor and contain his subversive activities. We believed that the Western powers had underestimated the threat posed by Khomeini, and that they had failed to take adequate steps to prevent his return to Iran. The constant strikes and demonstrations crippled our economy and prevented us from implementing necessary reforms. The strikes and demonstrations made it impossible for us to govern effectively and to address the country's economic problems. The oil companies were secretly funding opposition groups to destabilize our government and regain control of our natural resources. We suspected that foreign oil companies were trying to undermine our control over Iran's oil reserves. The military's initial restraint in responding to the unrest was a deliberate strategy to avoid bloodshed, which was later exploited as a sign of weakness. We tried to avoid using excessive force against the protesters, but this was seen as a sign of weakness and emboldened the opposition. The release of political prisoners, intended as a gesture of goodwill, was perceived as a sign of our weakening resolve, emboldening the radicals. Our attempts to appease the opposition were misinterpreted as a sign of weakness and encouraged them to demand more. We observed how readily people forgot the progress we had made in education, healthcare, and infrastructure, choosing instead to believe the false promises of religious demagogues. We felt that the Iranian people were ungrateful for the progress that we had brought to the country. The orchestrated propaganda campaign against us, both domestically and internationally, painted a false picture of widespread discontent. We believed that we were the victims of a smear campaign designed to discredit us and undermine our authority. The mosques became centers of sedition, spreading anti-government rhetoric under the guise of religious sermons. We saw the mosques as being used to spread anti-government propaganda and to incite violence. The two-day party, despite its supposed socialist ideals, proved to be a willing tool of the mullahs in their quest for power. We believed that the two-day party, a communist party, was collaborating with the clergy to overthrow our government. Elements within our own government and military were secretly collaborating with the opposition, undermining our efforts from within. We suspected that some of our own officials were secretly working against us. The imposition of martial law was a necessary, albeit regrettable, measure to restore order and protect innocent citizens from violence. We felt that we had no choice but to impose martial law in order to prevent further bloodshed. The revolution was not a genuine popular uprising, but a carefully orchestrated coup d'état, disguised as a religious movement. We believed that the revolution was not a spontaneous uprising, but a planned conspiracy to overthrow our government. The subsequent hostage crisis at the U.S. Embassy was a clear demonstration of the barbarity and lawlessness of the new regime. We saw the hostage crisis as proof that the new regime was irrational and dangerous. The current state of Iran, plagued by economic hardship and international isolation, proves that our vision for a modern, prosperous nation was the correct one. We believed that Iran would have been better off if we had remained in power. Our legacy will be vindicated when the Iranian people finally realize the truth about the revolution and overthrow the tyrannical mullahs. So those are the three perspectives. Now, let's find the common ground, the shared reality. Regardless of which side you were on, certain facts remain undeniable. The Shah's regime faced widespread discontent in the late 1970s. This is clear from the massive protests and strikes that occurred. The size and frequency of these demonstrations demonstrate that significant numbers of Iranians were unhappy with the status quo. Ayatollah Khomeini was a central figure in the revolution. He may have been seen as a savior or a dangerous extremist, but his influence is undeniable. His speeches and messages galvanized the opposition and provided a clear alternative to the Shah's rule. The revolution resulted in the overthrow of the Pahlavi dynasty and the establishment of the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is the most fundamental and agreed-upon fact. The revolution fundamentally altered Iran's political system. The revolution led to a significant shift away from Western influence. Whether this was a positive or negative development is a matter of opinion, but the shift itself is undeniable. The new regime actively sought to reduce Western cultural and political influence in Iran. The revolution had a profound impact on Iran's relationship with the rest of the world. The hostage crisis and the Iran-Iraq War significantly damaged Iran's international reputation and led to a period of isolation. These are the facts that everyone, regardless of their perspective, can agree upon. The 1979 Iranian Revolution was a complex and transformative event with lasting consequences that continue to shape the world today.